In the cathedral silence of an ancient forest, where shafts of golden light pierce through layers of emerald canopy, something extraordinary unfolds beneath our feet. The forest floor appears deceptively simple at first glance, a carpet of fallen leaves in various stages of decay, scattered twigs, and the occasional mushroom pushing through the rich, dark soil. Yet this seemingly quiet realm pulses with an intensity of life that rivals the most bustling metropolis, conducting transactions and conversations that have shaped our world for hundreds of millions of years. The air here carries the deep, earthy scent of decomposition and renewal, a perfume distilled from centuries of falling leaves, dying wood, and the patient work of countless unseen organisms. Each breath draws in molecules that have been cycling through this system for longer than human civilization has existed. The humidity hangs thick and nurturing, creating perfect conditions for processes that most of us never see, never consider, yet depend upon for our very existence. Beneath the surface of this forest floor lies a universe of staggering complexity and sophistication. The soil itself teems with more life than exists above ground. Billions upon billions of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and arthropods engaging in an intricate dance of survival, cooperation, and chemical exchange. In a single handful of this rich earth, there are more living organisms than there are people on our planet, each playing a vital role in a system so complex that science is only beginning to comprehend its full scope and significance. The towering trees that dominate the lands, cape above, Douglas firs, reaching heights that dwarf skyscrapers, ancient oaks with trunks that would take a dozen people holding hands to encircle, maples whose canopies could shelter entire neighborhoods. These giants appear to stand as solitary monuments to individual strength and endurance. Their massive trunks seem to declare independence, their vast root systems hidden from view, creating an illusion of self-reliance that masks one of nature's most remarkable secrets. But appearances deceive. These forest titans, despite their imposing stature and apparent autonomy, are neither solitary nor self-sufficient. They exist as part of a vast living network that connects not just individual trees, but entire ecosystems across continents. This network operates through channels so fine they are invisible to the naked eye, yet so extensive they span thousands of miles. It facilitates communication so sophisticated, it rivals the internet, resource sharing so efficient, it puts human economic systems to shame, and collective intelligence so profound, it challenges our very understanding of what it means to be alive. The forest floor beneath our feet serves as the foundation for this hidden civilization. Every fallen leaf, every piece of decomposing wood, every fragment of organic matter becomes raw material for an underground economy that operates on principles of mutual benefit, long-term sustainability, and collective survival. The seemingly random scatter of debris across the forest floor actually represents a carefully orchestrated system of resource distribution where nothing is waste and everything has purpose. As morning mist rises from the warming soil, carrying with it the chemical signatures of countless ongoing processes, we begin to glimpse the true nature of this place. The forest is not a collection of individual organisms competing for limited resources, but rather a single, vast, interconnected entity, a wood-wide web of communication and cooperation that has been operating successfully for hundreds of millions of years, long before the first human ancestors walked upright. The ancient trees that tower above us are not the forest's primary architects, though they may appear to be. The true engineers of this system work in darkness, in spaces measured in micrometers rather than meters, building highways and communication networks that span the entire forest and beyond. These hidden builders construct their infrastructure using materials so fundamental to life that they were among the first living things to colonize land, yet so sophisticated in their operations that they continue to reveal new capabilities to scientific investigation. The soil itself becomes a living entity. To stay under this new understanding, not merely a mixture of mineral particles and organic matter, but a thriving metropolis where chemical signals flash between inhabitants faster than thought, where resources flow through carefully maintained channels to wherever they are most needed, and where information about environmental conditions travels through the network faster than any human communication system could manage. This underground internet processes data, makes decisions, and coordinates responses across vast distances with an efficiency that leaves our most advanced technologies looking primitive by comparison. Standing in this forest, surrounded by the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds, we are witnessing the operation of one of the planet's oldest and most successful civilizations. The apparent tranquility masks a level of activity and interaction that would overwhelm our senses if we could perceive it directly. Chemical conversations flow continuously through the soil, nutrients stream along invisible highways, and warning signals flash through the network at the first sign of danger or opportunity. The true marvel lies not in the impressive height of individual trees or the beauty of the forest canopy, but in the intricate web of relationships that makes their existence possible. Every tree in this forest is connected to every other tree through a network so complex and extensive that scientists are only beginning to map its basic structure. This connection runs deeper than mere proximity. It represents a form of collective consciousness that challenges our understanding of where one organism ends and another begins. The forest floor, that seemed so peaceful moments before, reveals itself as an arena of intense competition and remarkable cooperation, shaped by environmental pressures that have been building for millennia. Here, in the dark spaces between soil particles, survival depends not on individual strength, but on the ability to form alliances, share resources, and communicate across vast networks that span the entire forest ecosystem. Water moves through this underground realm in patterns that would astound any engineer. During the dry months of late summer, when the forest canopy blocks most rainfall from reaching the ground, the soil becomes a complex hydraulic system where every drop of moisture is precious currency. The fine root networks that penetrate every cubic inch of earth must compete for these limited water resources, yet, paradoxically, their survival depends on sharing what they find. The trees that tower overhead, with their massive water requirements, could never survive on what their individual root systems could gather alone. The chemistry of the soil itself creates pressures that no surface-dwelling organism could comprehend. Nutrients essential for life exist in forms locked away in mineral particles, requiring sophisticated chemical keys to unlock. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and dozens of other elements vital for growth lie scattered throughout the soil matrix in compounds so stable they might remain unavailable for centuries without the intervention of specialist organisms evolved specifically to break these molecular bonds. Temperature fluctuations create their own demanding environment in the underground realm, while the surface of the forest floor might experience dramatic swings from freezing winter nights to blazing summer afternoons. The soil maintains more stable conditions just inches below, yet even these seemingly minor temperature variations trigger complex responses throughout the underground network. Chemical reaction rates change with the warming and cooling cycles, affecting the speed at which nutrients can be processed and transported through the system. The acidity of the soil presents another layer of environmental challenge that shapes every interaction in this hidden world. Different areas of the forest floor maintain different pH levels, creating microenvironments as distinct as separate continents. What thrives in the acidic conditions beneath a grove of pine trees would struggle to survive in the more alkaline soils near limestone outcroppings. These chemical boundaries create territories and migration patterns that govern the underground economy as surely as mountain ranges and ocean currents shape human civilizations. Seasonal cycles impose their own rhythms on this subterranean society. Spring's warming soil triggers an explosion of activity as dormant processes awaken from winter's slow metabolism. The network that seemed nearly inactive during the cold months suddenly pulses with renewed energy, processing the accumulated organic matter from autumn's leaf fall and preparing to support the massive growth surge that comes with longer days and warming temperatures. Summer brings peak activity, but also peak stress, as limited water resources must be carefully managed across the entire network. The weight of the forest itself creates physical pressures that shape the underground landscape. Massive trees, some weighing hundreds of tons, compress the soil beneath them into dense layers that require specialized adaptations to penetrate. The network must navigate around these compressed zones while maintaining continuous connections across the forest floor. Root systems must be engineered to withstand not only their own trees' weight, but the shifting pressures created by neighboring giants swaying in the wind. Oxygen levels in the soil create yet another set of environmental constraints that drive remarkable adaptations. While the surface world enjoys abundant atmospheric oxygen, the spaces between soil particles often become depleted of this essential gas, particularly in waterlogged conditions or in dense clay soils. The organisms that thrive in this environment must either function with minimal oxygen or participate in complex trading relationships that ensure adequate gas exchange throughout the network. The constant rain of organic matter from the forest canopy above creates both opportunity and challenge for the underground community. Each falling leaf, twig, and piece of bark represents a concentrated package of energy and nutrients, but in forms that require extensive processing before they become useful to the forest network. The decomposition process releases these resources gradually, but only through the coordinated efforts of countless specialist organisms working in carefully orchestrated sequences. Chemical warfare plays out continuously in this underground arena, as different organisms release compounds designed to suppress competitors or defend valuable territories. The soil becomes a complex battlefield where chemical signals serve as both weapons and peace treaties, marking boundaries, establishing dominance, and negotiating truces that allow the network to function despite the fierce competition for limited resources. The electromagnetic properties of the soil itself influence the behavior of the underground network in ways that scientists are only beginning to understand. Clay particles carry electrical charges that affect how nutrients move through the soil solution, while mineral components create subtle electromagnetic fields that may play roles in navigation and communication throughout the network. These physical forces add another layer of complexity to an already intricate system of environmental pressures. Predation pressure from above creates constant vigilance requirements for the underground network. Root-eating insects, nematodes, and other soil-dwelling predators represent ongoing threats that must be detected, defended against, and sometimes strategically sacrificed to protect the larger network. The system must maintain defensive capabilities while continuing to perform its essential functions of resource gathering and distribution. The legacy of disturbances past continues to shape the current underground landscape areas where trees fell decades ago during storms, places where fires swept through and altered soil chemistry, locations where flooding temporarily changed drainage patterns. All of these historical events left permanent marks on the underground network that influence current patterns of connection and resource flow. Air pressure changes, transmitted through the soil's pore spaces, carry information about approaching weather systems that the underground network must prepare for. Atmospheric pressure drops preceding storms trigger protective responses throughout the system, while stable high-pressure systems signal opportunities for expanded activity and growth. The network has evolved to read these environmental cues and adjust its operations accordingly. The gravitational pull of the Earth itself creates orientation challenges for organisms living in the three-dimensional maze of soil spaces. Unlike surface organisms that can use visual cues for navigation, underground network components must rely on chemical gradients, moisture patterns, and other subtle environmental signals to maintain their direction and coordinate their activities across the vast expanse of the forest floor. Within this pressurized underground arena, three distinct groups of players have evolved to not only survive, but to thrive through unprecedented cooperation. Each brings unique capabilities to the forest network, and together they form partnerships so sophisticated that they challenge our understanding of what constitutes a single organism versus a collaborative community. The trees themselves, those magnificent giants that define the forest skyline, reveal their true nature only when we examine their underground presence. A mature Douglas fir's root system spreads horizontally far beyond the reach of its branches, creating a network that may extend 200 feet in every direction from the trunk. These roots probe the soil with extraordinary sensitivity, constantly testing chemical gradients, moisture levels, and nutrient availability. They grow with purpose and intelligence, seeking not just resources but connections, specific relationships that will determine their tree's survival and success. The fine feeder roots that do the actual work of nutrient absorption are marvels of biological engineering. Thinner than human hair, they penetrate soil spaces measured in micrometers, extending and retracting based on local conditions, with a responsiveness that rivals any sophisticated sensor network. A single large tree may have millions of these delicate root tips actively exploring the soil at any given moment, each one capable of detecting and responding to chemical signals with extraordinary precision. But the trees, for all their impressive root architecture, face a fundamental limitation that shapes the entire forest ecosystem. They excel at photosynthesis, converting sunlight into sugars with remarkable efficiency, but they struggle with one of the most basic requirements for survival: extracting essential nutrients from soil. Their roots can absorb water and some dissolved minerals, but many of the nutrients they need remain locked in forms they cannot access. This limitation has led to one of evolution's most remarkable innovations, a partnership so intimate that it blurs the line between separate organisms. The fungal partners in this alliance belong to a group so diverse and sophisticated that they represent one of the largest kingdoms of life on Earth. These are not the familiar mushrooms that occasionally appear on the forest floor, though those fruiting bodies are indeed part of the larger story. The real fungal presence exists as vast networks of microscopic threads called hyphae, finer than spider silk, that permeate every cubic inch of forest soil. A single handful of earth may contain several miles of these fungal threads, creating a network density that exceeds human neural tissue. These fungal networks possess capabilities that complement the tree's limitations perfectly. Where tree roots cannot break down complex organic compounds or extract nutrients from mineral particles, fungal enzymes excel. They can dissolve rock, decompose the most resistant organic materials, and transform locked nutrients into forms that living organisms can use. Their hyphal networks extend far beyond where any tree root could reach, accessing resources across vast areas and concentrating them for transport back to their tree partners. The fungal threads themselves represent a marvel of biological architecture. Each hypha consists of a tube-like structure that can transport nutrients, water, and chemical signals across remarkable distances. The walls of these tubes are selectively permeable, allowing precise control over what enters and exits the network at any point. The fungi can adjust the diameter of their transport tubes, create bypass routes around damaged areas, and even seal off compromised sections while maintaining network function. Within the soil matrix itself, a third group of players contributes essential services that make the tree-fungal partnership possible. Bacteria exist in numbers that dwarf all other life forms in the forest, with populations measured in the billions per gram of soil. These microscopic organisms serve as the network's chemical processors, breaking down complex organic molecules into simpler compounds that the fungal tree partnership can utilize. Some bacteria specialize in nitrogen fixation, capturing atmospheric nitrogen gas and converting it into forms that other organisms can use, a service so valuable that plants often trade precious carbon compounds for access to bacterial nitrogen. Other bacterial specialists focus on specific chemical transformations: sulfur cycling, phosphorus mobilization, trace element processing. Each bacterial community occupies specific niches within the soil ecosystem, creating chemical gradients and reaction zones that the larger network depends upon. These bacterial populations respond rapidly to changing conditions, ramping up or down their chemical processing based on network needs and environmental pressures. The soil-dwelling animals add another layer of complexity to this underground society. Earthworms, moving like living plows through the earth, create channels that improve water infiltration and root penetration, while mixing organic matter throughout the soil profile. Their digestive processes transform organic debris into nutrient-rich castings that enhance soil fertility wherever they travel. The tunnels they create become highways for fungal growth and root expansion, while their constant movement helps maintain soil structure and prevents compaction. Microscopic soil animals, springtails, mites, nematodes, and countless others graze on bacterial and fungal populations, creating a complex food web that regulates the underground ecosystem. Their feeding activities stimulate microbial growth, distribute nutrients, and maintain the balance between different microbial communities. Some of these tiny animals form their own partnerships with specific fungi or bacteria, creating networks within networks that add layers of redundancy and resilience to the overall system. The relationships between these different players extend far beyond simple cooperation. Many of the interactions represent true mutualistic partnerships, where each participant provides something essential that the others cannot produce themselves. Trees supply carbon compounds produced through photosynthesis, the fundamental energy source that powers the entire underground economy. Fungi provide access to nutrients and water that trees cannot obtain alone, while also offering protection from soil-borne diseases and toxic compounds. The bacterial communities serve as both partners and intermediaries, processing materials that neither trees nor fungi can handle directly, while also facilitating communication between different parts of the network. They produce and respond to chemical signals that coordinate activities across the forest floor, ensuring that resources flow to where they are most needed, and that threats are detected and responded to rapidly. These partnerships have evolved over hundreds of millions of years, creating levels of integration and interdependence that challenge traditional concepts of individual organisms. The tree that appears to stand alone above ground exists only as part of a vast collaborative network below ground. Its individual survival depends entirely on the health and function of its underground partners, while their survival depends equally on the tree's ability to capture sunlight and convert it into the carbon compounds that fuel the entire system. The sophistication of these relationships becomes apparent when we consider how they manage resource distribution across the network. During times of abundance, surplus resources flow from areas of high production to storage sites throughout the network. During stress periods, these stored resources flow back to where they are most needed, maintaining network stability even when individual components face severe challenges. The communication systems that coordinate these resource flows operate through chemical signals of remarkable complexity and specificity. Trees can send distress signals through the network when attacked by insects or diseases, triggering defensive responses in distant partners. Resource availability: information flows continuously through the system, allowing real-time adjustment of growth patterns and resource allocation strategies across the entire forest network. Each member of this underground alliance has developed behavioral strategies so sophisticated they rival the most complex human technologies, yet these behaviors operate continuously, automatically, and with an efficiency that puts our most advanced systems to shame. The daily activities of these forest network participants reveal intelligence, cooperation, and strategic thinking that transforms our understanding of what it means to be alive. The trees begin each day with a ritual as ancient as photosynthesis itself, the careful monitoring and adjustment of their underground investments. Through their fine root networks, they conduct what amounts to a comprehensive survey of soil conditions, testing hundreds of thousands of microscopic locations for moisture, nutrients, pH levels, and the chemical signatures of their fungal partners. This information gathering happens continuously, but dawn brings a surge of activity as rising temperatures and increasing light levels signal the beginning of another day of intensive resource production and allocation. A mature tree's root system operates like a sophisticated trading floor, constantly making decisions about where to invest limited resources for maximum return. When a root tip encounters a promising area, perhaps a pocket of rich organic matter, or a zone where fungal partners are particularly active, the tree responds by increasing resource allocation to that area, growing more root mass and establishing stronger connections. Conversely, when soil conditions deteriorate or competition becomes too intense, the tree can withdraw its investment, allowing less productive root sections to die back while redirecting resources to more promising locations. The chemical communication strategies employed by trees reveal remarkable sophistication in their daily operations. Through their roots, trees release specific chemical compounds that serve multiple functions simultaneously. Some chemicals attract beneficial fungi and bacteria, while repelling potential pathogens. Others serve as territorial markers, establishing the tree's claim to specific soil areas. Still others function as distress signals, calling for help from network partners when the tree faces challenges it cannot handle alone. The precision of these chemical signals astounds researchers who study plant communication. A tree under attack by a specific type of insect can release compounds that not only call for defensive assistance, but actually specify the type of threat being faced. Neighboring trees receiving these signals can begin producing defensive compounds before the threat reaches them, creating a coordinated defense response across the entire forest network. The fungal partners in this system exhibit behaviors that challenge every assumption about plant-like organisms. These fungi actively hunt for resources with a persistence and strategic thinking that rivals any predator. Their hyphal networks grow with clear purpose, following chemical trails to locate nutrients, water sources, and potential new partners. When a fungal network encounters a promising resource patch, it can rapidly redirect growth toward that location, sometimes abandoning less productive areas entirely to focus energy where returns are highest. The fungi demonstrate remarkable problem-solving abilities in their daily operations. When their normal pathways become blocked or damaged, they quickly develop alternative routes, sometimes growing entirely new network branches to maintain connectivity. They can detect and respond to seasonal changes, adjusting their metabolism and growth patterns to match the shifting needs of their tree partners. During autumn, as trees reduce their photosynthetic activity, fungi shift their focus to decomposing the abundant leaf litter, maintaining network function even as energy inputs from their tree partners decline. Perhaps most remarkably, fungi exhibit what can only be described as memory and learning in their behavioral patterns. Networks that have successfully navigated particular challenges, drought, disease outbreaks, or resource scarcity, maintain structural and chemical preparations that allow them to respond more rapidly when similar challenges arise again. This biological memory operates across multiple seasons, with some fungal networks showing preparatory responses to environmental conditions they haven't encountered for years. The bacterial communities within the soil demonstrate their own sophisticated behavioral strategies, operating at timescales that compress entire life cycles into hours or days. These microscopic organisms exhibit quorum sensing, the ability to detect population density and coordinate group behaviors accordingly. When bacterial populations reach critical thresholds, they can switch from individual survival mode to community cooperation mode, dramatically altering their chemical outputs and resource processing activities. The different bacterial species have evolved specialized daily routines that complement the larger network's activities. Some bacteria become most active during the pre-dawn hours, processing accumulated organic matter and preparing nutrients for the day's plant growth. Others synchronize their activities with their plant host's photosynthetic cycles, ramping up nitrogen processing during peak daylight hours, when plants can most effectively use the products of bacterial metabolism. The soil animals contribute their own behavioral sophistication to the network's daily operations. Earthworms, for instance, exhibit complex foraging strategies that maximize their soil processing efficiency while minimizing competition with other earthworms. They can detect and respond to the chemical signatures of fresh organic matter, adjusting their movement patterns to focus their feeding activities where their soil improvement efforts will have maximum impact on network function. Microscopic soil predators such as nematodes and springtails regulate bacterial and fungal populations through carefully coordinated grazing strategies. These tiny animals can distinguish between different microbial species and selectively graze populations that have grown too large, maintaining the microbial balance that keeps the network functioning optimally. Their feeding activities also stimulate microbial growth through a process similar to pruning, ensuring that bacterial and fungal populations remain active and productive. The daily coordination between all these different organisms requires behavioral synchronization that operates across multiple time scales simultaneously. Short-term coordination handles immediate resource allocation and threat responses, while longer-term behavioral patterns manage seasonal transitions and multi-year resource storage strategies. The network participants can shift between individual survival behaviors and collective network support behaviors based on current conditions and future predictions encoded in their biological programming. Resource conservation behaviors represent another layer of sophistication in the network's daily operations. During abundant periods, network participants actively store surplus resources in specialized structures. Trees invest in root growth and starch storage. Fungi create dense hyphal networks and storage organs, and bacterial communities build up population reserves. These storage strategies require precise behavioral control to balance current needs against future uncertainties. The network's response to stress reveals behavioral capabilities that suggest collective intelligence operating across the entire forest floor. When one area of the network faces severe challenges, perhaps drought, disease, or physical damage, other areas automatically adjust their behaviors to compensate. Resources flow towards stressed areas, defensive compounds are shared across the network, and growth patterns shift to maintain overall network integrity, even when individual components suffer losses. Quality control behaviors operate continuously throughout the network, with participants constantly monitoring the performance and health of their partners. Trees can detect when their fungal partners are underperforming and adjust their resource investments accordingly. Fungi can assess the health and productivity of their tree partners, shifting their own resource allocation strategies based on their partner's condition. These ongoing assessments ensure that the network's cooperative relationships remain mutually beneficial rather than degenerating into exploitation. The sophistication of these behaviors becomes even more remarkable when we consider that they operate without central control or conscious direction. Each organism follows its own genetic programming and responds to local environmental cues. Yet the collective result is a coordinated system that manages resources, responds to challenges, and maintains stability across spatial scales that span entire forests and temporal scales that span multiple generations. The moment when individual strategies transform into collaborative partnerships marks one of the most remarkable transitions in the natural world. In the soil beneath our feet, this transformation unfolds countless times each day. As tree roots encounter fungal networks, bacterial communities interface with plant tissues, and microscopic soil animals begin their intricate dances of mutual benefits. These initial connections represent the birth of the relationships that will define the forest's survival for decades or even centuries to come. The first contact between a tree root and a potential fungal partner unfolds with the precision of a diplomatic negotiation. As a young root extends through the soil, it releases a carefully composed cocktail of chemical signals, sugars, amino acids, and specialized compounds that serve as both advertisement and invitation. These molecules announce the root's identity, its current resource status, and its willingness to engage in partnership. The chemical signature is as specific as a fingerprint, allowing compatible fungi to distinguish this particular tree species from the dozens of other plants competing for their attention in the same soil space. Fungi respond to these chemical invitations with their own sophisticated evaluation process. A fungal network encountering a potential plant partner conducts what amounts to a comprehensive background check, testing the root's chemical emissions for authenticity, health status, and partnership potential. The fungi can detect whether the plant is already heavily committed to other partnerships, whether it shows signs of disease or stress, and whether its resource production capacity justifies the investment required to establish a connection. When both parties determine that partnership would be mutually beneficial, the process of physical connection begins with extraordinary precision. The fungal hyphae approach the root surface and begin secreting specialized enzymes that soften the plant's protective barriers without causing damage. Simultaneously, the root responds by modifying its cell walls in the contact zone, creating entry points that allow the fungal partner to establish intimate connections with the plant's internal tissues. This initial physical integration represents one of biology's most remarkable achievements. The controlled breach of cellular barriers that normally serve as absolute defensive boundaries. The fungal hyphae penetrate the root's outer layers and begin forming intricate branching structures within the plant's own cells. These structures, called arbuscules, create enormous surface areas for chemical exchange while maintaining the structural integrity of both partners. The interface between plant and fungal tissue becomes a specialized trading post where resources can be exchanged with extraordinary efficiency. The establishment of nutrient trading relationships reveals the sophisticated economics that govern forest partnerships. Trees offer fungi access to carbon compounds produced through photosynthesis, sugars, starches, and complex organic molecules that represent captured sunlight energy. These carbon payments can constitute up to 30% of a tree's total photosynthetic production, making the fungal partnership one of the most significant investments in the tree's resource budget. In return, fungi provide trees with access to nutrients that would otherwise remain completely unavailable. Fungal enzymes can break down complex organic compounds, dissolve mineral particles, and extract nutrients from soil spaces too small for root penetration. The fungi concentrate these liberated nutrients and transport them directly to their plant partners through their hyphal networks, often moving resources across distances that would take tree roots months or years to traverse. The negotiation of exchange rates between partners demonstrates remarkable sophistication in biological trading systems. Trees can adjust their carbon payments based on the quality and quantity of nutrients received, while fungi can modify their nutrient delivery based on the reliability and generosity of their plant partners. These adjustments happen continuously, creating dynamic trading relationships that respond to changing environmental conditions and partnership performance. Water sharing represents another crucial dimension of the developing partnerships. Fungal networks can access water sources far beyond the reach of individual root systems, drawing moisture from deep soil layers, distant water tables, or areas of higher humidity. This water, collected across vast underground territories, can be transported through the fungal network and delivered directly to plant partners facing drought stress. During dry periods, this water-sharing service can mean the difference between survival and death for forest trees. The communication pathways that develop between partners reveal the emergence of biological internet protocols. Chemical signals flow in both directions through the plant-fungal interface, carrying information about environmental conditions, resource availability, and potential threats. Trees can send distress signals to their fungal partners when facing insect attacks, disease pressure, or environmental stress. Fungi can relay warnings about soil contamination, competing organisms, or changes in local growing conditions that might affect their plant partners. The establishment of defensive alliances adds another layer of complexity to these developing relationships. Fungi can provide their plant partners with chemical protection against soil-borne pathogens, secreting antifungal and antibacterial compounds that create protective zones around root systems. Some fungal partners can even mobilize defensive responses when their host plants come under attack, ramping up production of toxic compounds that deter herbivores or pathogens. Trees reciprocate by providing fungi with defensive compounds that help protect the delicate hyphal networks from damage. Certain plant-produced chemicals can strengthen fungal cell walls, improve their resistance to environmental stresses, or enhance their competitive ability against other microorganisms. These mutual defense arrangements create partnership benefits that extend far beyond simple resource exchange. The integration of bacterial partners into these plant-fungal relationships demonstrates how biological partnerships can expand into complex, multi-species alliances. Specific bacterial communities often establish themselves at the plant-fungal interface, where they process chemical compounds that neither plants nor fungi can handle effectively. These bacteria can enhance nutrient uptake, improve disease resistance, or provide specialized chemical services that strengthen the overall partnership. Some bacterial partners specialize in nitrogen fixation, capturing atmospheric nitrogen gas and converting it into forms that plants can use. These bacteria often form intimate relationships with both plant roots and fungal networks, creating three-way partnerships where each member provides essential services that the others cannot perform. The coordination required to maintain these multi-species alliances represents some of the most sophisticated biological cooperation known to science. Quality control mechanisms operate continuously in these developing partnerships, ensuring that cooperative relationships remain mutually beneficial rather than degenerating into exploitation. Both plants and fungi maintain the ability to reduce their investments in partnerships that become unproductive, while simultaneously increasing support for relationships that prove especially valuable. This ongoing evaluation process creates selective pressure that favors honest cooperation and reliable partnership performance. The timing of partnership establishment follows sophisticated seasonal and developmental patterns that maximize the benefits for all participants. Many plant-fungal connections intensify during spring growth periods when trees have high nutrient demands and abundant carbon production capacity. Partnership activity often peaks during summer when resource production and consumption rates reach their highest levels, then transitions to resource storage and preparation phases during autumn. The spatial organization of these partnerships creates intricate underground territories and resource-sharing zones. Individual trees may maintain partnerships with dozens of different fungal species, each specialized for different types of resource acquisition or environmental conditions. These multiple partnerships create redundancy and resilience in the tree's resource supply systems while providing fungi with diverse and reliable income streams from their various plant partners. The chemical complexity of these interaction patterns continues to reveal new dimensions as research techniques advance. Scientists have identified hundreds of different compounds involved in plant-fungal communication, with new signaling molecules discovered regularly. The sophistication of this chemical communication system rivals human language in its complexity and exceeds our electronic communication systems in its efficiency and reliability. As individual partnerships mature and multiply, they weave together into relationship networks of staggering complexity that transform the forest floor into a living superorganism. What began as simple bilateral exchanges between neighboring organisms evolves into sophisticated multi-party dependencies that span entire watersheds and connect trees separated by miles of forest terrain. These complex relationships reveal that the forest operates less like a collection of individual plants and more like a vast distributed organism with its own collective intelligence and memory. The fungal networks that initially served as simple trading partners between individual trees and soil organisms gradually expand into massive underground webs that may encompass thousands of acres. A single fungal network can simultaneously connect hundreds of trees of different species, ages, and sizes, creating a communication and resource-sharing system that dwarfs any human infrastructure project. These networks grow and adapt over decades, with some of the largest and most complex fungal webs estimated to be centuries old, predating many of the trees they currently serve. Within these expanded networks, individual trees develop what can only be described as social relationships with varying degrees of intimacy and mutual dependence. Mother trees, the largest, oldest specimens that anchor forest communities, often maintain the most extensive connection portfolios, linking with dozens of different species and hundreds of individual plants throughout their territorial range. These ancient giants serve as network hubs, facilitating resource flows and communication pathways that would be impossible through direct tree-to-tree connections. The resource-sharing systems that emerge from these complex relationships operate with a sophistication that challenges economic theory. During periods of abundance, productive trees invest surplus resources into the network, where they are distributed according to complex algorithms that consider current need, historical contribution, strategic importance, and future potential. Young saplings struggling to establish themselves in the understory may receive substantial resource subsidies from mature trees, even when the saplings belong to different species that might theoretically compete for the same resources. These resource transfer patterns reveal that the forest network operates according to principles that transcend simple market economics. Trees experiencing temporary setbacks, perhaps due to drought, disease, or physical damage, can receive emergency resource transfers that sustain them through periods when their own resource production capacity is compromised. The network appears to maintain collective memory of each participant's historical contributions and reliability, with trees that have previously supported the network during stressed periods receiving priority access to emergency assistance when they need it. The communication complexity within these mature networks reveals information processing capabilities that rival sophisticated computer systems. Chemical signals carrying detailed environmental information flow continuously through the fungal connections, creating real-time data networks that span entire forest ecosystems. Trees can receive advance warning of approaching threats, insect outbreaks, disease epidemics, or severe weather from network participants miles away, allowing them to begin defensive preparations before the threats arrive in their immediate vicinity. The precision of this communication system becomes apparent when researchers study how forests respond to localized disturbances. When a single tree suffers insect damage or disease infection, chemical distress signals propagate through the network faster than the threat itself can spread. Neighboring trees receive these warnings and begin producing defensive compounds, altering their chemical signatures to become less attractive to the threatening organisms. This coordinated defense response can create zones of enhanced resistance that contain threats before they can establish widespread infestations. Seasonal coordination across these complex networks demonstrates collective intelligence that operates across multiple timescales simultaneously. As autumn approaches, the network begins coordinating resource storage strategies that will sustain the entire community through winter dormancy. Trees gradually reduce their photosynthetic activity while increasing their contributions to shared storage facilities maintained by their fungal partners. These stored resources are carefully allocated throughout the winter months to maintain essential network functions and prepare for the explosive growth demands of spring. The network's response to major disturbances reveals emergency protocols that seem designed to preserve collective survival even when individual components suffer catastrophic losses. When windstorms topple large trees or fires sweep through forest sections, the surviving network quickly reorganizes to maintain connectivity and resource flows. Fungal connections reroute around damaged areas, establishing new pathways that bypass destroyed sections while gradually working to restore connections to any surviving tree tissues. These disaster response capabilities include sophisticated triage systems that allocate limited resources to maximize network survival rather than individual tree preservation. Trees with the best survival prospects receive priority resource allocations, while those too severely damaged to recover may be systematically disconnected from the network to prevent resource waste. This harsh but effective approach to crisis management allows forest networks to survive disturbances that would devastate unconnected tree populations. The multi-generational aspects of these relationship networks reveal planning and investment strategies that operate across centuries. Mature trees invest heavily in establishing connections with young saplings that may not become productive network contributors for decades. These long-term investments suggest that the network maintains collective memory and planning capabilities that extend far beyond the lifespan of individual participants. Genetic diversity maintenance represents another sophisticated function of these complex relationship networks. The network actively promotes genetic mixing by facilitating resource sharing between different tree species and genetically distinct populations. This genetic integration creates hybrid vigor effects that enhance the overall resilience and adaptability of forest communities. Trees that might never naturally hybridize can exchange genetic material through their shared fungal partners, creating genetic diversity that strengthens the entire network's ability to adapt to changing environmental conditions. The territorial organization within these complex networks creates sophisticated resource management zones that optimize efficiency while minimizing conflicts. Different sections of the network specialize in different functions. Some areas focus on nutrient processing and storage, others concentrate on water collection and distribution, while still others serve as communication hubs that coordinate activities across the entire system. This functional specialization allows the network to achieve efficiencies impossible for individual organisms operating independently. Competitive relationships within cooperative frameworks represent one of the most sophisticated aspects of these mature networks. While trees may compete directly for sunlight and growing space above ground, their underground network connections create cooperation imperatives that moderate this competition. Trees that might appear to be fierce rivals for canopy space often maintain extensive underground partnerships that benefit both participants, creating complex relationship dynamics where competition and cooperation operate simultaneously. The network's ability to integrate new members while maintaining system stability demonstrates adaptive management capabilities that ensure long-term viability. When new trees establish in the forest, the existing network evaluates their potential contributions and gradually incorporates them into existing relationship patterns. This integration process can take years or decades, with new members earning increased network access through demonstrated reliability and valuable resource contributions. Quality assurance mechanisms operate continuously throughout these complex networks, monitoring partnership performance and adjusting relationship intensities based on mutual benefit assessments. Trees and fungi that prove unreliable or exploitative gradually find themselves excluded from network benefits, while those that demonstrate exceptional partnership value receive enhanced access and priority treatment. These ongoing evaluation processes ensure that network cooperation remains based on genuine mutual benefit rather than one-sided exploitation. The information processing capabilities of these mature networks include predictive functions that allow the forest community to prepare for environmental changes before they occur. By analyzing patterns in temperature fluctuations, moisture availability, and chemical signatures, the network can anticipate seasonal transitions, drought periods, and other environmental challenges. This predictive capacity allows coordinated preparation strategies that enhance the entire network's survival prospects during difficult periods. The sophisticated relationships that bind the forest together operate through hidden mechanisms, so elegant and efficient that they reveal biological technologies far more advanced than anything human engineering has achieved. These mechanisms function continuously, automatically adjusting their operations to maintain network stability while responding to thousands of variables that change by the hour, day, and season. Understanding these hidden strategies provides a glimpse into evolutionary innovations that have been perfected over hundreds of millions of years. The chemical communication systems that coordinate network activities operate through molecular languages of extraordinary complexity and precision. Individual trees can produce and detect hundreds of different chemical compounds, each carrying specific information about environmental conditions, resource status, or network needs. These chemical messages travel through the soil solution, through fungal hyphal networks, and even through the air above ground, creating multi-channel communication systems that ensure critical information reaches its intended recipients, regardless of local interference or damage. The sophistication of this chemical messaging system becomes apparent when we examine how trees encode different types of information in their molecular communications. Distress signals carrying information about insect attacks include specific chemical identifiers that allow receiving trees to distinguish between different types of threats and prepare appropriate defensive responses. Resource availability announcements contain detailed chemical signatures that specify not only what nutrients are available, but also their concentration levels, accessibility, and the investment required to obtain them. Perhaps most remarkably, trees can embed temporal information in their chemical communications, creating messages that essentially function as biological timestamps. Chemical compounds with different decay rates allow trees to communicate not only current conditions, but also how long those conditions have persisted and how rapidly they are changing. A tree experiencing drought stress can send signals that indicate whether the stress is acute and recent or chronic and long-lasting, allowing network partners to calibrate their response strategies accordingly. The fungal transport systems that move resources and information throughout the network represent masterpieces of biological engineering that surpass human infrastructure in both efficiency and adaptability. Individual fungal hyphae function as microscopic pipelines that can actively pump materials against concentration gradients, moving nutrients from areas of low concentration to areas of high demand with energy efficiency that no human pump system can match. These biological pipelines can adjust their transport capacity in real time, increasing flow rates when demand is high and reducing them during periods of lower activity. The control mechanisms that regulate these transport systems demonstrate sophisticated understanding of network economics and resource optimization. Fungi can prioritize resource flows based on multiple criteria simultaneously: recipient need, sender capacity, historical trading relationships, and strategic network importance, all factor into resource allocation decisions. When multiple trees compete for limited nutrients, the fungal network applies complex algorithms that consider not only immediate need, but also each tree's historical contributions to network stability and their potential for future resource production. Quality control systems operate at every stage of resource transport, ensuring that materials moving through the network meet strict standards for purity and usefulness. Fungal networks can detect and filter out toxic compounds, pathogens, and other harmful materials that might damage network participants. These biological filtration systems can distinguish between hundreds of different chemical compounds, allowing beneficial materials to pass while blocking potentially dangerous substances with a selectivity that exceeds the most sophisticated human filtration technologies. The routing algorithms that guide resource flows through complex fungal networks demonstrate problem-solving capabilities that rival advanced computer systems. When direct pathways become blocked or damaged, the fungal network can rapidly calculate alternative routes that maintain connectivity while minimizing transport costs. These biological routing systems can even predict potential bottlenecks and proactively establish backup pathways before problems occur, creating redundancy levels that ensure network function continues even when significant sections suffer damage. The energy management strategies employed by network participants reveal optimization techniques that maximize efficiency while maintaining operational flexibility. Trees carefully regulate their carbon investments in fungal partnerships, increasing contributions during periods when nutrient returns are high and reducing them when partnership performance declines. This dynamic investment strategy allows trees to maintain multiple partnership options while avoiding overcommitment to any single relationship that might become unproductive. Fungi employ equally sophisticated energy management techniques, allocating their growth and transport activities to maximize returns across their entire partnership portfolio. During resource-abundant periods, fungi invest heavily in network expansion and capacity building. During stressed periods, they can rapidly downsize their operations, maintaining only the most essential connections while putting growth and expansion activities on hold until conditions improve. The timing mechanisms that coordinate network activities across different timescales represent some of the most sophisticated biological clock systems known to science. Individual trees and fungi maintain multiple internal timing systems that track daily cycles, seasonal changes, and multi-year patterns simultaneously. These biological clocks can be synchronized across the entire network, allowing coordinated responses to environmental changes that span vast distances and involve thousands of individual organisms. Seasonal preparation protocols demonstrate how these timing mechanisms translate into coordinated action strategies. As autumn approaches, chemical signals begin circulating through the network that initiate synchronized preparation for winter dormancy. Trees gradually shift their resource allocation patterns, increasing investments in storage while reducing growth activities. Fungi begin concentrating nutrients in specialized storage structures while strengthening their hyphal networks to survive freezing temperatures. The security mechanisms that protect network communications and resource flows reveal sophisticated understanding of information warfare and economic defense. Trees can encrypt their chemical communications using molecular signatures that only trusted network partners can decode, preventing eavesdropping by competitors or potential parasites. These biological encryption systems can be updated and modified over time, maintaining communication security even as new threats emerge in the soil environment. Fraud detection systems operate continuously throughout the network, identifying and responding to organisms that attempt to exploit network resources without providing fair compensation. Trees and fungi that consistently receive benefits without contributing adequate resources can be systematically excluded from network access through coordinated chemical and physical barriers. These exclusion mechanisms can operate across multiple partnership relationships simultaneously, creating network-wide responses to exploitative behavior. The conflict resolution mechanisms that manage disputes within cooperative relationships demonstrate sophisticated diplomatic capabilities. When resources become scarce and partnership tensions arise, the network employs mediation strategies that prioritize collective survival over individual advantage. These biological mediation systems can redistribute resources, modify partnership terms, and establish new cooperation agreements that restore network stability while addressing the legitimate needs of all participants. Emergency response protocols reveal the network's capacity for rapid crisis management that coordinates resources and responses across vast distances. When individual trees face immediate threats, such as severe disease or physical damage, they can trigger network-wide emergency responses that mobilize resources and defensive capabilities from throughout the forest community. These emergency protocols can override normal resource allocation patterns, redirecting network capacity to crisis management until threats are contained or neutralized. The learning mechanisms embedded in these biological systems allow the network to improve its performance over time based on experience with environmental challenges and internal conflicts. Trees and fungi can modify their behavioral patterns based on the outcomes of previous decisions, gradually optimizing their strategies through processes that resemble machine learning algorithms. These biological learning systems can operate across multiple generations, with successful strategies being passed down through genetic programming and network memory systems. The redundancy and backup systems that ensure network resilience demonstrate engineering principles that prioritize reliability over efficiency. Critical network functions are replicated across multiple pathways and participants, ensuring that essential services continue even when individual components fail. These biological backup systems can be activated automatically when primary systems become compromised, maintaining network function with minimal disruption during crisis periods. The survival techniques that have evolved within the forest network represent the pinnacle of biological innovation, combining individual resilience with collective intelligence to create adaptation strategies that enable survival in environments that would quickly overwhelm isolated organisms. These sophisticated survival systems operate across multiple scales simultaneously, from molecular responses that occur in microseconds to ecosystem-wide adaptations that unfold over centuries, creating layers of protection and resilience that ensure network continuity even under extreme stress. The chemical warfare capabilities developed by network participants demonstrate defensive sophistication that rivals the most advanced military technologies. Trees can synthesize and deploy hundreds of different toxic compounds, each specifically designed to target particular classes of threats. When faced with insect attacks, trees can produce compounds that not only poison the attacking insects, but also disrupt their reproductive cycles, interfere with their communication systems, and make their host plants unpalatable to future generations. These chemical weapons can be deployed selectively, targeting specific threats while avoiding harm to beneficial network partners. The precision of these chemical defense systems becomes apparent when examining how trees respond to complex multi-species attacks. A single tree under assault by several different types of herbivores can simultaneously produce distinct cocktails of defensive compounds, each optimized for a specific threat. Compounds that effectively deter leaf-eating caterpillars may be completely different from those that repel bark-boring beetles, yet the tree's chemical defense system can coordinate the production and deployment of both types of defenses simultaneously. Perhaps most remarkably, trees can share their chemical defense innovations throughout the network, creating collective immunity that protects the entire forest community. When a tree develops an effective defense against a new type of pathogen or pest, the chemical formula for that defense can be transmitted through fungal connections to other network members. This biological technology transfer allows defensive innovations to spread throughout the forest faster than the threats themselves can disperse, creating network-wide resistance that prevents epidemics before they can establish. The stress tolerance mechanisms that enable network survival during environmental extremes reveal adaptation strategies that operate like sophisticated insurance systems. During drought periods, the network implements water conservation protocols that would be impossible for individual trees to achieve alone. Deep-rooted trees with access to groundwater can share their reserves with shallow-rooted neighbors through fungal intermediaries, while trees in higher moisture areas can redirect excess water to stressed network partners through the same underground channels. These water-sharing systems include predictive capabilities that allow the network to prepare for drought conditions before they become severe. Trees can detect subtle changes in soil moisture patterns, atmospheric humidity, and other early indicators of developing water stress. When these early warning signals are detected, the network begins implementing conservation measures and resource redistribution strategies that build drought resistance before water becomes critically scarce. Temperature regulation techniques demonstrate how the network creates microclimates that buffer individual participants against extreme weather conditions. The fungal networks that connect tree roots can actively transport heat and cold through the soil, moving thermal energy from areas where it is abundant to areas where it is needed. During winter, this thermal transport system can prevent root systems from freezing, while during summer heat waves, it can provide cooling that prevents heat damage to sensitive plant tissues. The network's ability to create and maintain these thermal refugia extends to chemical buffering systems that protect participants from soil chemistry extremes. When soil pH becomes too acidic or alkaline for optimal growth, fungal partners can transport neutralizing compounds that restore chemical balance in root zones. These chemical buffering systems can operate locally around individual trees or across broader areas when ecosystem-wide chemistry problems develop. Nutrient mining and concentration techniques reveal how the network transforms marginal soils into highly productive growing environments. Fungal networks can extract nutrients from rock formations, decomposing organic matter, and other sources that individual plants could never access. These extracted nutrients are then concentrated and delivered to network participants in forms and quantities that support robust growth even in soils that would normally be considered infertile. The efficiency of these nutrient extraction systems approaches the theoretical limits of biological possibility. Fungal enzymes can dissolve mineral crystals that have remained stable for millions of years, liberating essential nutrients that become available to the network within hours of extraction. The energy cost of these extraction processes is carefully managed through network-wide resource pooling, where multiple participants contribute energy to extraction operations that benefit the entire community. Genetic adaptation mechanisms operating within the network demonstrate how collective intelligence can accelerate evolutionary responses to environmental challenges. While individual trees might require centuries to develop genetic adaptations to new environmental conditions, the network can facilitate genetic exchange between different populations and species that dramatically speeds adaptation processes. Pollen and other genetic material can be transported through network connections, creating opportunities for genetic recombination that would be impossible through natural reproductive processes alone. These genetic exchange systems include quality control mechanisms that promote beneficial adaptations while preventing the spread of harmful genetic variants. The network can somehow evaluate the performance of different genetic combinations and selectively promote the reproduction of individuals that demonstrate superior adaptation to current environmental conditions. This biological genetic engineering operates at ecosystem scales, optimizing the genetic composition of entire forest communities over relatively short time frames. Immune system coordination across the network creates collective disease resistance that exceeds the capabilities of any individual organism. When pathogens attack one network member, chemical signals alerting other participants to the threat can trigger preemptive immune responses throughout the forest community. These coordinated immune responses can prevent disease outbreaks by creating hostile environments for pathogens before they can establish widespread infections. The sophistication of these collective immune systems includes memory functions that maintain long-term resistance to previously encountered threats. Chemical signatures of past pathogen encounters are somehow stored within network memory systems, allowing rapid recognition and response when similar threats reappear. This biological immunological memory can persist for decades, protecting forest communities from cyclical disease outbreaks that might otherwise cause devastating losses. Damage repair and regeneration capabilities demonstrate how the network can recover from catastrophic disturbances that would permanently eliminate isolated organisms. When fires, storms, or other disasters destroy large portions of the forest, surviving network components can rapidly mobilize resources to support regrowth and recovery. Fungal networks that survive underground can reconnect with new tree seedlings, providing them with immediate access to stored resources and establish trading relationships that accelerate forest regeneration. These regeneration systems include adaptive capabilities that allow forests to recover with improved resistance to the types of disturbances that caused the original damage. Trees that regrow after fire often demonstrate enhanced fire resistance, while forests recovering from storm damage may develop improved structural resilience against wind damage. The network somehow captures and preserves information about disturbance patterns, incorporating this learning into recovery strategies that reduce vulnerability to similar future events. Temporal adaptation strategies reveal how the network optimizes its operations across multiple time scales to maximize long-term survival prospects. Short-term adaptations handle immediate environmental challenges. Medium-term strategies manage seasonal and annual cycles, while long-term adaptations prepare for environmental changes that may not manifest for decades or centuries. These multi-scale adaptation systems allow the network to maintain optimal performance under current conditions while building resilience for future uncertainty. The coordination required to manage these complex adaptation strategies demonstrates planning capabilities that operate like sophisticated forecasting systems. The network continuously monitors environmental trends, resource availability patterns, and threat development cycles, using this information to guide current activities and resource allocation decisions. These biological forecasting systems can predict seasonal transitions, drought cycles, and other environmental patterns with accuracy that allows proactive adaptation rather than merely reactive survival responses. The survival strategies that individual network members have perfected over millions of years weave together into interconnection patterns of breathtaking complexity that transform entire forest ecosystems into unified superorganisms. These system-wide dynamics reveal that the forest operates according to principles that transcend individual biology, creating emergent properties and behaviors that exist only at the ecosystem level. The interconnection patterns that govern these dynamics demonstrate that forests function as distributed information processing systems capable of learning, memory, and decision-making at scales that encompass entire watersheds and mountain ranges. The primary architecture of forest interconnection reveals itself through fungal highway systems that dwarf any human transportation network in both scope and efficiency. Individual fungal threads, each thinner than spider silk, combine to form cables and conduits that can transport resources across distances measured in miles rather than meters. These biological highways create express routes between distant forest communities, allowing resources produced in one area to support growth and survival in completely different ecosystems dozens of miles away. The traffic flow patterns through these fungal highway systems demonstrate sophisticated routing algorithms that optimize resource distribution across multiple variables simultaneously. During spring growth periods, massive flows of nutrients and water stream from winter storage areas toward regions experiencing rapid growth, while autumn brings reverse flows as resources move toward long-term storage facilities in preparation for winter dormancy. These seasonal traffic patterns require coordination across thousands of individual network participants, yet they operate with clockwork precision that maintains forest-wide synchronization. Quality of service protocols operating within these interconnection systems ensure that critical communications and emergency resource transfers receive priority routing through the network. When trees face immediate survival threats, their distress signals can commandeer network bandwidth, ensuring rapid response regardless of other traffic demands. These emergency protocols can temporarily reorganize vast sections of the network, creating dedicated channels that maintain crisis communication even when normal network operations become overwhelmed. The load balancing capabilities demonstrated by these interconnected systems reveal distributed computing principles that prevent network bottlenecks and ensure optimal performance across all components. When individual sections of the fungal highway system experience high demand, traffic can be automatically rerouted through alternative pathways that maintain network flow without overwhelming any single route. These biological load balancing systems can respond to changing conditions in real time, continuously optimizing network performance as demand patterns shift throughout daily and seasonal cycles. Network redundancy systems create multiple backup pathways that ensure connectivity even when major routes become damaged or blocked. Individual trees may maintain connections to the broader network through dozens of different fungal intermediaries, creating web-like connectivity patterns that can route around damaged areas without losing network access. These redundant connections represent significant resource investments, but they provide insurance against catastrophic network failures that could isolate forest communities during critical periods. The information processing capabilities that emerge from these interconnected systems demonstrate collective intelligence that operates through distributed decision-making algorithms. Individual network participants process local information and contribute their analysis to network-wide decision-making processes that coordinate responses across the entire forest ecosystem. These distributed intelligence systems can solve complex optimization problems such as resource allocation during drought or coordinated defense against widespread pest outbreaks that would overwhelm any centralized decision-making system. Pattern recognition systems operating across the interconnected network can detect environmental trends and threats that become apparent only when viewed at ecosystem scales. Individual trees might not detect the early stages of a developing drought or the beginnings of an insect population boom, but the network's collective monitoring capabilities can identify these threats while they are still manageable. This ecosystem-scale pattern recognition allows proactive responses that prevent problems before they become crises. Memory systems distributed throughout the interconnected network preserve information about past environmental conditions, successful adaptation strategies, and effective responses to various threats. This collective memory operates through multiple mechanisms: genetic programming that preserves successful strategies across generations, chemical signature libraries that maintain records of past encounters with pathogens and pests, and structural modifications to fungal networks that reflect lessons learned from previous challenges. The temporal dynamics of these interconnected systems reveal how forest networks operate across multiple timescales simultaneously. Real-time responses handle immediate threats and opportunities. Daily cycles coordinate routine resource management activities. Seasonal patterns manage major transitions in network function, while multi-year and decadal cycles govern long-term adaptation and infrastructure development. These overlapping temporal scales create complex rhythms that synchronize forest activities across vast spatial areas. Spatial organization patterns within the interconnected network create functional zones that specialize in different aspects of ecosystem management. Some areas focus on resource production and processing, others concentrate on storage and distribution, while still others serve as communication hubs that coordinate activities across multiple forest communities. This functional specialization allows the network to achieve efficiency gains that would be impossible if every area tried to perform every function independently. The boundaries between different functional zones within the network operate as dynamic interfaces that can expand, contract, or shift location based on changing environmental conditions and network needs. During drought periods, water collection zones may expand while production areas contract, creating temporary reorganization that optimizes network performance under stress conditions. These boundary adjustments happen gradually and coordinatedly, maintaining network integrity while adapting to changing circumstances. Feedback control systems operating throughout the interconnected network maintain stability and prevent runaway processes that could destabilize forest ecosystems. Resource flows are continuously monitored and adjusted to prevent any single area from becoming resource depleted or oversupplied, while growth patterns are coordinated to maintain balance between different forest components. These biological feedback systems operate with sensitivity and precision that maintains ecosystem stability across decades of environmental variability. The scaling properties of these interconnected systems reveal how network principles that operate at microscopic levels between individual organisms can expand to govern interactions across entire continents. The same chemical communication protocols that coordinate resource sharing between neighboring trees can propagate information across networks that span multiple forest ecosystems, creating continent-wide coordination of responses to large-scale environmental changes such as climate shifts or major disturbance events. Network resilience mechanisms ensure that interconnected systems can maintain function even when large portions of the network suffer damage or destruction. When fires, storms, or other catastrophic events eliminate significant network components, the remaining infrastructure can reorganize to maintain essential functions while gradually rebuilding damaged connections. This resilience operates through multiple strategies: redundant pathways that route around damaged resource reserves that sustain network function during rebuilding periods, and rapid growth protocols that accelerate infrastructure restoration. Evolutionary pressures operating on these interconnected systems create selection forces that favor network-level adaptations rather than just individual organism improvements. Trees and fungi that contribute to overall network function and stability gain competitive advantages through enhanced network access and resource sharing opportunities. These network-level selection pressures drive the evolution of increasingly sophisticated cooperation and coordination capabilities that benefit entire forest ecosystems. The innovation propagation mechanisms within interconnected networks allow successful adaptations and improvements to spread rapidly throughout forest communities. When individual trees or fungi develop more efficient resource processing techniques, improved defensive strategies, or better environmental monitoring capabilities, these innovations can be shared through network connections much faster than they could spread through normal reproductive processes. This biological technology transfer accelerates adaptation rates across entire ecosystems. Quality assurance systems operating throughout the interconnected network ensure that information and resources moving through the system meet standards that maintain network integrity and function. Chemical signals are verified for authenticity and accuracy, resource transfers are monitored for fairness and sustainability, and network participants are continuously evaluated for their contributions to collective welfare. These quality assurance mechanisms prevent the spread of misinformation, exploitation, and other factors that could undermine network cooperation and effectiveness. From the intricate web of interconnections that span the forest floor emerges something extraordinary, properties and behaviors that exist only at the ecosystem level, transcending anything that individual trees, fungi, or soil organisms could achieve independently. These emergent phenomena reveal that forests possess forms of collective intelligence, coordinated decision-making, and adaptive learning that challenge our fundamental understanding of what constitutes a single organism versus a cooperative community. The forest network operates as a unified entity with its own personality, memory, and problem-solving capabilities that exist nowhere else in the biological world. The collective decision-making processes that emerge from countless individual interactions demonstrate computational capabilities that rival the most sophisticated artificial intelligence systems. When the forest network faces complex challenges, such as managing resources during extended drought periods, coordinating responses to widespread pest outbreaks, or adapting to gradual climate changes, it processes information from thousands of monitoring points simultaneously and generates coordinated responses that optimize outcomes across the entire ecosystem. These biological decision-making processes can weigh multiple variables, consider long-term consequences, and implement solutions that individual organisms could never conceive or execute alone. The forest's collective memory systems preserve not just information about past events, but also the successful strategies that enabled survival and recovery from various challenges. This ecosystem-level memory operates through multiple storage mechanisms that create redundant archives of critical information. Genetic libraries maintained across tree populations preserve adaptation strategies that proved successful over evolutionary timescales. Chemical signature databases stored in fungal networks maintain records of pathogen encounters and effective defensive responses. Structural modifications to network architecture preserve lessons learned from past disturbances and recovery efforts. Perhaps most remarkably, the forest network can access and apply this stored information in real time when facing new challenges that resemble past threats. The speed and accuracy with which forests can recognize and respond to familiar patterns suggests information processing capabilities that operate through parallel processing algorithms distributed across millions of network participants. This collective memory enables forests to respond to cyclical threats, such as periodic insect outbreaks or recurring drought patterns, with coordinated strategies that reflect accumulated wisdom from previous encounters. The predictive capabilities that emerge from the forest's collective intelligence demonstrate forecasting abilities that often exceed human environmental monitoring systems. The network continuously analyzes subtle patterns in temperature fluctuations, moisture variations, atmospheric chemistry changes, and biological activity levels to anticipate environmental shifts before they become apparent through conventional monitoring techniques. These biological forecasting systems can predict seasonal transitions, extreme weather events, and long-term environmental trends with accuracy that allows proactive adaptation rather than reactive crisis management. The forest's ability to model and test potential responses to predicted changes reveals simulation capabilities that operate like sophisticated scenario planning systems. Before implementing major adaptive strategies, the network can apparently run trial programs in limited areas to evaluate their effectiveness and potential consequences. These biological pilot programs allow the forest to refine and optimize its responses before committing resources to ecosystem-wide implementation, reducing the risks associated with major adaptive changes. Quality control mechanisms operating at the ecosystem level ensure that the forest's collective intelligence maintains accuracy and reliability, despite the complexity of information processing across millions of individual components. Error detection and correction systems identify and compensate for faulty information, failed connections, and malfunctioning network participants. These quality assurance processes operate continuously, maintaining system integrity while allowing for the flexibility and adaptability that enable collective learning and improvement. The forest's collective personality emerges through consistent behavioral patterns that persist across decades and even centuries of environmental variation. Individual forests develop distinctive response styles, resource management approaches, and adaptation strategies that reflect their unique environmental histories and evolutionary experiences. These ecosystem-level personality traits influence how forests respond to new challenges and opportunities, creating predictable patterns of behavior that persist even as individual trees and fungi within the network are replaced over time. Communication protocols that operate at the ecosystem level create coordination capabilities that synchronize activities across vast distances and diverse environmental conditions. The forest network can coordinate simultaneous responses across multiple watersheds, mountain ranges, and climatic zones, creating synchronized activities that span geographical areas larger than many human nations. These coordination capabilities enable responses to large-scale environmental changes that require ecosystem-wide adaptation strategies operating across multiple generations of individual organisms. The forest's collective learning processes demonstrate educational capabilities that allow ecosystems to improve their performance over time through experience and experimentation. Successful innovations developed in one area of the network can be evaluated, refined, and propagated throughout the entire forest system much faster than normal evolutionary processes would allow. This biological education system enables forests to adapt to environmental changes and new challenges with speed and effectiveness that approaches real-time problem-solving. Resource optimization algorithms operating at the ecosystem level create efficiency improvements that maximize forest productivity while minimizing waste and environmental impact. The network can identify and eliminate inefficient resource allocation patterns, optimize growth strategies to maximize carbon sequestration and biomass production, and coordinate infrastructure development to minimize energy costs and environmental disruption. These optimization processes operate continuously, creating gradual improvements in forest performance that accumulate over time into significant efficiency gains. Conflict resolution mechanisms that emerge at the ecosystem level manage competition and cooperation among diverse network participants to maintain overall system stability and productivity. The forest network can mediate disputes between competing organisms, allocate scarce resources in ways that minimize conflict while maximizing collective benefit, and establish protocols that prevent destructive competition from undermining network cooperation. These biological diplomatic systems maintain social stability within forest communities that include thousands of different species with potentially conflicting interests. Innovation propagation systems operating at the ecosystem level accelerate the development and deployment of new adaptive strategies that enhance forest survival and productivity. When individual network participants develop improved techniques for resource processing, environmental monitoring, or threat response, these innovations can be evaluated and shared throughout the network much faster than normal genetic inheritance would allow. This biological technology transfer creates rapid adaptation capabilities that enable forests to respond to environmental changes and new challenges with unprecedented speed and effectiveness. The forest's strategic planning capabilities demonstrate long-term thinking that operates across multiple generations of individual organisms to optimize ecosystem development and sustainability. Infrastructure investments, resource allocation patterns, and adaptation strategies reflect planning horizons that extend decades into the future, considering environmental trends, resource availability projections, and potential future challenges that may not manifest for years or even decades. These long-term planning capabilities enable forests to prepare for future conditions while maintaining optimal performance under current circumstances. System maintenance protocols that emerge at the ecosystem level ensure that the forest network maintains its functional integrity and performance capabilities over extended periods. Regular maintenance activities include infrastructure repair and upgrading, component replacement and regeneration, performance monitoring and optimization, and preventive measures that address potential problems before they become critical. These maintenance systems operate automatically and continuously, preserving forest network function across centuries of environmental variation and internal component turnover. The ecosystem-level consciousness that emerges from these collective properties suggests awareness and intentionality that transcend individual organism cognition. The forest network appears to possess something analogous to consciousness, awareness of its environment, memory of past experiences, goals and intentions that guide its activities, and the ability to make deliberate choices that shape its future development. This forest consciousness operates through distributed processing systems that create unified awareness and intentionality from the coordinated activities of millions of individual network participants, challenging traditional boundaries between individual and collective intelligence. The collective intelligence that emerges from forest networks operates within temporal frameworks that span from microseconds to millennia, creating layers of time-based coordination that enable the system to function optimally across vastly different scales of environmental change. These temporal cycles reveal that forest consciousness extends far beyond immediate awareness to encompass deep time perspectives that consider geological processes, evolutionary trends, and climate patterns that unfold across thousands of generations. Understanding these temporal dimensions transforms our perception of forests from collections of individual organisms to entities that think and plan across timescales that dwarf human civilization. Daily rhythms orchestrate the forest's most basic operational cycles, synchronizing activities across the entire network with precision that rivals atomic clocks. As dawn breaks across the canopy, chemical signals cascade through fungal networks, faster than the advancing light, triggering coordinated responses that prepare millions of network participants for the day's activities. Photosynthetic processes ramp up in precise synchronization with increasing light levels, while underground nutrient processing systems adjust their operations to match the day's projected energy production and resource demands. The coordination required to maintain these daily cycles across networks that span multiple time zones demonstrates computational capabilities that process astronomical data, weather patterns, and biological rhythms simultaneously. Trees separated by hundreds of miles can synchronize their daily activities despite experiencing sunrise and sunset at different times, suggesting that the network maintains awareness of astronomical cycles that transcend local environmental conditions. This temporal coordination enables resource flows and communication patterns that optimize network performance across vast geographical areas. Seasonal transitions reveal the forest network's ability to anticipate and prepare for environmental changes weeks or months before they become apparent through conventional indicators. Chemical signals announcing the approaching end of summer begin circulating through the network while daylight hours are still increasing and temperatures remain at seasonal highs. These early warning systems allow the forest to begin preparing for autumn and winter dormancy long before environmental conditions actually require such preparations, demonstrating predictive capabilities that operate through biological analysis of subtle environmental cues. The metabolic adjustments that accompany seasonal transitions involve coordinated changes in resource allocation, growth patterns, and defensive strategies across millions of network participants. During the transition from summer to autumn, trees gradually reduce their investment in new growth while increasing resource flows towards storage systems maintained by their fungal partners. These metabolic transitions happen gradually over weeks or months, creating smooth transitions that maintain network stability while adapting to changing environmental conditions. Annual cycles within the forest network demonstrate memory systems that preserve information about environmental patterns, resource availability, and optimal timing strategies across multiple years. The network can compare current year conditions with historical patterns stored in its collective memory, adjusting its seasonal timing and resource allocation strategies based on long-term trends rather than just immediate environmental cues. This biological pattern recognition enables forests to adapt their annual cycles to gradual environmental changes, such as shifting climate patterns or evolving ecological relationships. Decadal patterns within forest networks reveal strategic planning capabilities that operate across timescales that encompass multiple generations of shorter-lived network participants. Infrastructure development projects, such as expanding fungal highway systems or establishing new resource processing centers, often require years or decades to complete. Yet the network can maintain coordinated effort across these extended time periods despite complete turnover in many of its individual components. These long-term projects demonstrate institutional memory and strategic planning capabilities that persist even as individual trees, fungi, and soil organisms are replaced. The forest's response to multi-year environmental cycles, such as drought sequences, insect population booms, and disease outbreaks, reveals adaptation strategies that incorporate historical analysis of similar past events. Network responses to current challenges reflect accumulated wisdom from previous encounters with comparable situations, suggesting that forest memory systems can identify patterns across decades or even centuries of environmental variation. This historical pattern recognition enables increasingly sophisticated responses to cyclical environmental challenges. Generational cycles within forest networks demonstrate how collective intelligence can persist and evolve across centuries despite complete replacement of individual network participants. Young trees growing up within established networks inherit not just genetic programming from their parents, but also access to network memory systems that contain accumulated knowledge from previous generations. This biological cultural transmission enables forests to preserve and build upon successful strategies across time periods that exceed the lifespan of any individual organism. The mentor relationships that develop between ancient trees and young saplings create knowledge transfer systems that bridge generational gaps within forest networks. Mother trees with centuries of network experience can provide young trees with access to partnership relationships, resource flows, and environmental knowledge that would otherwise require decades to develop independently. These mentoring relationships accelerate the integration of new network participants while preserving institutional knowledge that might otherwise be lost. When older trees reach the end of their lifespans, evolutionary pressures operating within forest networks create selection forces that favor increasingly sophisticated cooperation and coordination capabilities across successive generations. Trees and fungi that contribute most effectively to network function and stability gain competitive advantages that enhance their reproductive success, creating evolutionary trends that favor collective intelligence over individual competition. These network-level selection pressures drive the evolution of increasingly sophisticated communication, resource sharing, and coordinated response capabilities. Climate adaptation strategies, operating across centennial timescales, reveal how forest networks can respond to gradual environmental changes through coordinated evolutionary responses that would be impossible for individual organisms. As climate patterns shift over decades or centuries, forest networks can facilitate genetic exchange between populations adapted to different environmental conditions, creating hybrid vigor and adaptive flexibility that enables ecosystem-wide responses to environmental change. The forest's ability to maintain genetic diversity while promoting beneficial adaptations demonstrates sophisticated population management strategies that balance stability with evolutionary flexibility. Network-facilitated genetic exchange can preserve rare genetic variants that might be eliminated through normal selection pressures, maintaining genetic resources that may prove valuable under future environmental conditions. This biological genetic conservation operates like an insurance policy that preserves adaptive potential for challenges that have not yet manifested. Co-evolutionary relationships between different network participants create evolutionary feedback loops that drive increasingly sophisticated cooperation and mutualism across geological timescales. As trees and fungi develop increasingly intimate partnerships, both groups evolve specialized traits that enhance their cooperative capabilities while reducing their ability to survive independently. These coevolutionary spirals create biological integration that approaches the formation of new types of composite organisms that exist at ecosystem scales. Deep time perspectives within forest networks reveal connections to geological processes and evolutionary events that span millions of years. The network architectures and cooperation strategies that characterize modern forests reflect evolutionary innovations that developed in response to past environmental challenges, catastrophic events, and opportunities that shaped the trajectory of life on Earth. Understanding these deep time connections reveals that current forest networks represent the culmination of evolutionary experiments that have been developing for longer than complex life has existed on land. The forest network's awareness of astronomical cycles and geological rhythms suggests temporal consciousness that extends far beyond biological timescales to encompass planetary and cosmic cycles. Network responses to subtle changes in solar radiation, magnetic field variations, and other astronomical influences demonstrate sensitivity to environmental factors that operate on timescales measured in millennia or longer. This cosmic awareness enables forests to prepare for and adapt to environmental changes that transcend normal ecological time frames. Legacy planning systems within forest networks demonstrate concern for future generations that extends hundreds of years into the future. Current resource allocation and infrastructure development decisions reflect consideration of environmental conditions and challenges that may not manifest for centuries, suggesting strategic planning capabilities that prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term optimization. These legacy planning systems ensure that forest networks continue to evolve and improve across timescales that encompass multiple cycles of environmental change and biological succession. The profound temporal consciousness that operates within forest networks opens our eyes to universal principles that extend far beyond the boundaries of any single ecosystem, revealing patterns and processes that connect the smallest soil organisms to the largest planetary systems. These discoveries transform our understanding not only of forests but of life itself, consciousness, cooperation, and the fundamental nature of intelligence in the universe. The lessons emerging from the forest floor challenge every assumption about individuality, competition, and the boundaries between organisms, offering new models for understanding everything from human societies to global ecological systems. The cooperative principles that govern forest networks mirror the fundamental forces that organize matter and energy throughout the universe. Just as trees and fungi create mutually beneficial partnerships that transcend individual limitations, atoms combine to form molecules, cells organize into tissues, and individuals form societies that achieve capabilities impossible for isolated components. The forest reveals that cooperation, not competition, may be the primary organizing force that creates complexity and intelligence at every scale of existence, from subatomic particles to galactic clusters. The information processing capabilities demonstrated by forest networks offer profound insights into the nature of consciousness and intelligence that extend far beyond traditional biological boundaries. If forests can think, remember, and make decisions through distributed chemical messaging protocols used by trees and fungi operate according to the same basic principles that govern internet communications, cellular phone networks, and computer systems. These biological communication networks achieved levels of efficiency, reliability, and security that human technologies are only beginning to approach, suggesting that nature has solved information processing challenges that we are still struggling to understand. The resource-sharing economies that sustain forest networks demonstrate economic principles that challenge fundamental assumptions about markets, competition, and resource allocation in human societies. Forest economies operate without currency, central planning, or enforcement mechanisms, yet they achieve resource distribution efficiency that eliminates waste while ensuring that all network participants receive what they need for survival and growth. These biological economic systems suggest alternative models for human resource management that could address inequality, environmental destruction, and economic instability. The conflict resolution mechanisms that maintain harmony within forest networks offer insights into diplomatic and social management strategies that could transform human relationships at every scale. Forests successfully manage competition and cooperation among thousands of different species with potentially conflicting interests, creating stable societies that persist for centuries without destructive conflicts. The biological diplomatic protocols that achieve this stability could inform approaches to international relations, community organization, and conflict prevention in human societies. The memory and learning systems that preserve forest knowledge across generations reveal educational principles that could revolutionize how human societies transfer knowledge and maintain cultural continuity. Forest networks combine genetic inheritance, experiential learning, and cultural transmission to preserve and build upon accumulated wisdom across centuries of environmental change. These biological education systems suggest approaches to human learning that could accelerate knowledge transfer while preserving valuable cultural knowledge that might otherwise be lost. The predictive capabilities that enable forests to anticipate and prepare for environmental changes demonstrate forecasting principles that could enhance human abilities to predict and adapt to complex challenges. Forest networks integrate vast amounts of environmental data from millions of monitoring points to generate accurate predictions about future conditions and optimal response strategies. These biological forecasting systems could inform approaches to climate prediction, economic forecasting, and social planning that improve human abilities to prepare for future challenges. The healing and regeneration capabilities that enable forests to recover from catastrophic disturbances offer insights into resilience and recovery strategies that could help human communities survive and recover from disasters. Forest networks maintain redundant systems, distributed resources, and rapid response capabilities that enable recovery from fires, storms, diseases, and other catastrophic events. These biological resilience strategies could inform urban planning, infrastructure design, and emergency response systems that enhance human community survival capabilities. The innovation and adaptation systems that enable forests to evolve and improve over time reveal principles of creativity and problem-solving that could enhance human innovation capabilities. Forest networks combine experimentation, evaluation, and rapid propagation of successful innovations to accelerate adaptation to changing environmental conditions. These biological innovation systems suggest approaches to research, development, and technology transfer that could accelerate human scientific and technological progress, while ensuring that innovations benefit entire communities rather than isolated individuals. The quality control and maintenance systems that preserve forest network integrity demonstrate management principles that could enhance the reliability and sustainability of human systems. Forest networks maintain their functional capabilities across centuries through continuous monitoring, preventive maintenance, and systematic upgrading of infrastructure components. These biological management systems could inform approaches to infrastructure maintenance, organizational management, and system reliability that enhance the sustainability and effectiveness of human institutions. The integration of individual and collective intelligence that characterizes forest networks offers new models for understanding human consciousness and social organization. If individual trees can maintain their distinct identities while participating in collective intelligence systems that transcend individual awareness, then human beings might be capable of similar integration of individual and collective consciousness. This perspective suggests possibilities for human social organization that preserve individual autonomy while enabling collective intelligence and coordinated action on scales that address global challenges. The relationship between forests and planetary systems reveals connections that extend to cosmic scales and suggests that life, consciousness, and intelligence may be fundamental properties of the universe rather than rare accidents that occurred only on Earth. Forest networks participate in global cycles of carbon, water, and energy that regulate planetary climate and maintain conditions suitable for life. These planetary-scale life support systems suggest that consciousness and intelligence may be inherent properties of complex systems that emerge whenever matter and energy achieve sufficient organization and integration. The deep time perspectives that govern forest planning and decision-making offer models for human long-term thinking that could address challenges that require planning horizons measured in centuries or millennia. Forest networks make decisions and investments based on considerations that extend far beyond the lifespan of individual network participants, creating strategies that optimize outcomes across multiple generations. These biological long-term planning approaches could inform human approaches to climate change, resource management, and sustainable development that require coordination across multiple human generations. The universal connections revealed through understanding forest networks suggest that all life on Earth participates in planetary-scale intelligence systems that extend beyond individual species or ecosystems. The chemical communication systems, resource-sharing networks, and information processing capabilities that characterize forest networks may represent local expressions of planetary consciousness that connects all living systems through shared participation in global biogeochemical cycles and evolutionary processes. Standing once again in the cathedral silence of the ancient forest, surrounded by the towering giants that first drew our attention, we now understand that we are witnessing the operation of one of the universe's most sophisticated intelligence systems. The forest beneath our feet represents not just a collection of individual organisms, but a window into fundamental principles of consciousness, cooperation, and creativity that may govern the organization of intelligence throughout the cosmos. Listen, learning to see the forest as it truly is, a living network of extraordinary sophistication and wisdom. We discover new possibilities for understanding ourselves, our relationships with each other, and our place within the vast web of intelligence that connects all life on Earth and perhaps throughout the universe.